Protests in Minneapolis target a church now, and what is the DOJ saying about this? I'm going to catch you up in under 10 minutes on everything you need to know here on The Britt Mayer Show. Well, just yesterday, at the time of this recording, on January 18th, during a quiet Sunday service at a little church in St. Paul, Minnesota, a group of about 30 to 40 anti-ICE protesters stormed the sanctuary. You've probably seen the footage. If not, I'll overlay a little bit of it so you can see. They were chanting ICE out and justice for Renee Good. This is in reference to the woman who was fatally shot by an ICE agent earlier this month. They blew whistles, they confronted a pastor, and they disrupted worship for about 20 to 30 minutes. Sounds like your typical Sunday morning, right? No, it doesn't, because we have a protection in America of your right to worship. So here's where all this is going, because obviously this was a disaster situation. Many families, including scared children, left early. The cherry on the top is that former CNN host Don Lemon was really wanting his 15 seconds of fame back again, and he was embedded with the group. He live streamed the chaos. He was interviewing protesters, and he even grilled in what is now a viral, ridiculous interview a pastor inside the church, and the pastor basically was like, you need to leave. I need to go minister to my flock who are scared and upset. And Don Lemon was from my angle, harassing this pastor. It was the most unethical form of journalism I've ever seen. Didn't look a whole lot like journalism. It looked like he was a part of this group. Obviously, there are many who are now saying that this wasn't just a protest. This was an event that halted religious services in a house of worship. And now, just one day later, at the time of this recording, the Trump DOJ is hitting back, and they're hitting back hard. And we're going to expect to see rapid developments because of the language being used. Protesters targeted this church because one pastor, David Easterwood, is reportedly the acting ICE field office director for St. Paul. A video shows absolute chaos, as you have seen. There were chants that overwhelmed the hymns, drowned out the worship. There were upset congregants, and you've seen it. It was disturbing. It was frightening. It was clearly unnerving for those who were there to worship. Lemon defended it as First Amendment protected journalism and protest. Later, he called upset church members, quote, entitled white supremacists. So he is just really making some poor decisions when it comes to his involvement in all of this. Christian leaders have condemned this as despicable, demonic, and obviously this is a clear violation of religious freedom. So here's where we're going to tie this all together. The FACE Act. You've probably started to hear the FACE Act come up. FACE Act. This is the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. It's a 1994 act, and it is viewpoint neutral. I want you to highlight that. Viewpoint neutral, because it protects access to abortion clinics and places of religious worship. So you might not like one, but it's viewpoint neutral because it protects the other, okay? So it's going to protect access to abortion clinics and places of religious worship from force, threats, or obstruction. Now, under Biden, it was aggressively used against pro-life Christians. You may have remembered the stories about elderly activists praying and blocking clinics, and they got years in prison, and it was because of the FACE Act. It was often with added conspiracy charges. Now, you may not have seen the FACE Act used with attacks on pro-life centers post-Dobbs. Those attacks did happen, but there were barely any prosecutions. And this is where critics really started to sound the alarm that, hey, the FACE Act isn't being applied in this neutrality that it's supposed to be applied in. So under Trump, the DOJ's Civil Rights Division, which is led by Harmeet Dillon, is investigating this whole church incident that just happened as a potential FACE Act violation. She said that they are investigating and that these people desecrated a house of worship. Now, here's a twist, and this is really interesting because I just watched an interview where Harmeet Dillon is on with Benny Johnson, and they discuss the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, the KKK Act. Now, this act makes it a felony up to 10 years and more if there's injury for two or more people to conspire to intimidate or prevent exercising constitutional rights like free religious practice. Historically, this KKK Act was used against the KKK terrorizing Black voters, but the Biden DOJ tacked it on to face charges against pro-lifers for longer sentences. Okay, so very recent application under the Biden administration to have the KKK Act and the FACE Act, those charges brought together to really hammer down punishment. And it was used against pro-lifers with all these charges with abortion clinics. Now, Dillon explicitly said that this could happen and apply here to this whole church situation out of Minneapolis. It could turn misdemeanors into felonies if there's conspiracy, which would be planning, funding, coordination. And she warned the, quote, protest community that, quote, the fullest force of the federal government is going to come down and put people away for a long, long time. And all the Christians and conservatives who care about this said, amen, thank you. Because it's not fair to have justice doled out one way and not the other. It actually is injustice in that sense. So Don Lemon is specifically put on notice. Dillon accused Don Lemon of foreknowledge and participation and not neutral journalism. She said he knew what was going to happen and he is embedded in a criminal conspiracy. Journalism isn't a shield. That is so important to remember, that you can't show up, embed, and be a part of a crime and then hold up the shield of journalism. It doesn't work that way, which it appears could be the case of our wonderful Don Lemon, who made some very, very poor choices on Sunday. The FBI is currently interviewing witnesses. The probe includes organizers, funders, participants. Lemon is included. So sorry, Don Lemon, that you made some really bad decisions. No charges are filed yet, but Dillon says that it's fair to say charges are coming. So what we are learning in all of this, and this is your takeaway, is that there is a complete reversal from recent years under the prior administration. The same laws that hammered conservative Christians for nonviolent clinic protests, which they would say was to defend and save life, is now potentially going to be used to protect a church from left-wing disruption. At bare minimum. That's the lightest word I could use for what we saw happen on Sunday. This highlights claims of past selective enforcement, like we just talked about, and it also signals Trump DOJ's priority that there will be zero tolerance for interfering with worship, no matter the cause. Harmeet Dillon said that there is no right more sacred than freedom to assemble and pray. Again, broader messaging here is that for those protesters who think that they're really brave and heroic and are going to coordinate and go intimidate a house of worship and show up and storm that place and scare little kids and elderly who are there to worship on a Sunday morning, that coordinated intimidation of religious exercise signals a serious federal crime. And I think if there's anything we learn in this situation, that is the most important. We are expecting an even-handed application of the FACE Act and potentially the KKK Act. So if charges drop, we could expect felonies under the Klan Act, and this could set a precedent. And most importantly, protests don't get a pass, like I just said, in sacred spaces. Religious liberty will be protected aggressively under this administration. And for Christians, this is a welcome sign that we may be restoring true justice, where true application of the law is even, and there is not partiality shown because you want to protect one and not the other. So we are going to continue to monitor. This story is moving fast, but that is your current update as of Monday night on the event out of Minneapolis. Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you are listening, and thank you for being here.